Okay, here we go. All right, Liam, I want to thank you first and foremost for speaking with me today and taking the time to do this. If you could begin just by stating your name, your major, and a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So my name's Liam Tony, and I'm from the Pacific Northwest, north of Seattle in Washington State. And I go to school at Pomona College down in Claremont, California, which is outside of Los Angeles. And I'm a physics major there, with a probable geology minor. And this past fall, I was enrolled in the SIT India Sustainability, so shaping sustainable development and social change program. Too many.
That's the one.
In Jaipur. And so I just actually got back from India a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Great. So what led you to choose SIT in the first place? Before you even selected a program, just what led you to choose us?
Yeah. I think, so I'd heard about SIT I have some pretty good family friends whose children have done an SIT program. Both of them have done SIT programs in South America and Central America. And so I knew of the model, and I kind of had a basic understanding of the structure of SIT and the experiential portion of it. And I was looking into a few programs going into the fall. But I think after consulting with my study abroad office, we kind of came up with a few options for me, basically like considering topics of interest and cultures of interest, locations of interest. SIT happened to offer a few programs in Nepal and India that were appealing to me. And so then this particular one, we kind of talked more at length about it, and it seemed like the best fit for me.
How so? Why did you choose India over Nepal?
I think it's the bigger, partially it was just a practical influence with the tragic earthquake that occurred last May. I think me and a lot of people that ended up being on my program had been potentially considering Nepal, but didn't, for multitudes of reasons, didn't want to go there. And so that's one, straight practical reason. However, also just being I didn't really have any idea. I think I would have loved to go to Nepal as well. But I think now that I've been to India, I think I'm realizing that the bigger country, just it's a larger place, it's more diverse. There's a little more resources available to us in terms of like where we could go for our ISP. Like there's so many, different types of places and different communities and little worlds to explore. And so I think it's almost looking back upon it that I realize how happy I was to go to India. Although like looking forward, like going into it, I may not have had such a strong reason for like picking India.
I was going to say, as a physics major, how do you end up choosing a
yeah. Well, that's the liberal arts model, right? I can do that. I can be a philosophy major if I want to.
Indeed you can.
I guess I'm lucky enough. I was lucky enough to identify early on that I'd be able to go abroad in the fall of my junior year. And I think that, definitely at a larger school, or even with some physics programs that other just small schools, since there's so many classes, the course load is so large, that's usually not possible. So I'm first and foremost super thankful that I was able to even have this window. But I was looking into, it was kind of weird, I was looking into two types of programs. I'm like, well, I can go to Scotland or the UK and take physics courses abroad, which will help me towards my major and such and be a little more relevant. Or I can go somewhere else and do something totally different. And I think I have enough of a I've brought enough academic interest that the topics resonated with me as well as the culture. So I was like, I can do this, like the way that the physics program is scheduled up, I was actually able to utilize this break and I'm not too behind now. So I just really wanted to kind of take a break from the quantitative course load and explore something else.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy I did it. I think that's one of the biggest things for me is talking to science majors and convincing them like it's not I mean, maybe I'm speaking too soon because I'm about to jump into fluid mechanics and geophysics, but as of now, I'm so happy that I took the break, and I don't think that this is a program that necessarily has to only attract, sociology, economics. It doesn't need to have a particular bent to it academically. I think everyone can benefit if they have a large enough, broad enough interest base, I guess.
So on that note, what did you choose for your ISP topic?
I focused on comparative study of education, government versus private schools in a rural area of Sikkim in the Himalayas, in northern India.
Okay. Tell me about the process of how you landed on that topic and what was conducted like.
I kind of realized early on, I mean, like I could have, because the topic, which I forgot how to say essentially, is so broad, like sustainability. I mean, I could have feasibly gone in there, especially with, taking a geophysics turn and looking at like, someone a few years ago looked at building, the consistency of building materials in the Himalayas in like earthquake prone areas, and people can go pretty technical, but I kind of realized early on that it was going to be a little more difficult and not necessarily as fruitful to try to pursue something super scientific here, just with limited resources in that regard, even if there's resources that are available in spades in other areas in terms of like human connections and stuff. So I kind of realized that I didn't really necessarily want to pursue like a science project, but I have another interest in education. This past summer I was teaching a program called Breakthrough, and so that kind of turned me on to teaching and education as a whole. And I mean, India is a fascinating place education-wise, for a number of different ways that were highlighted during the early weeks of the program. So that kind of became one of my foci. And then I guess I realized that it would be really interesting to compare those two systems. And so having taught before for a couple months, like I realized I could do like this classroom observation. I wouldn't just have to be limited to the usual suite of focus groups and one-on-one interviews and stuff like that. I could actually do classroom observations and such, and kind of have another dimension to my research. And so that really interests me. And then I found a really awesome spot that was beautiful. So that was also pretty sweet. So I guess I never really thought I was going to go in doing something related to my major. I ended up studying education, and I have a paper that I'm not going to be using for thesis or anything, but I'm proud of it. So that's something.
Good. Was this the first time that you had ever conducted sort of a research paper through a social science lens?
Yeah, it's actually first social science time I've ever taken social science classes was with SIT. So.
Okay. Yeah. Did you feel prepared though and comfortable to be able to do that?
Yeah, I think to their credit, I think because a lot of the classes were guest lecturers coming in, but it was always pretty accessible. I mean, we had a few. I mean, I took intro economics freshman year, fall semester. I did not really have much of a grasp of it. And we had a few talks that were pretty econ heavy, but I we had an econ major with us, and then there was me, and I was able to understand. It was accessible. That people could pursue kind of, after the discussion, after the lecture, they could pursue things more deeply. But it was a good mix of, getting into the nitty gritty, but also being accessible to someone like me. And then again, some of the stuff, just by nature of the material, was kind of new to all of us. We had classes on like the Indian mindset, things that really didn't particularly fit. They're so interdisciplinary that no one could have like a previous kind of higher basis for it. So yeah, I didn't ever feel too overwhelmed by that.
Good.
Yeah, I definitely missed. I think towards the end of the semester, I definitely missed having some quantitative aspects. But I mean, I have plenty of that to hop back into in the spring. So
with fluid mechanics, yes, you're going to be fine in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, beginning to wrap up here, if you were to come across someone who wasn't familiar with SIT at all, our programs, our models, how would you explain SIT to them?
I think, and especially having talked to people that have done other SIT programs, like it is really experiential, and there are basic structural similarities. I mean, like you take classes and then you go somewhere, you like probably learn a language and then you go somewhere on your own. And then beyond that, like I would kind of stress that just based on the other people I've talked to, like how different the programs can be in terms of like the dynamic and the topic and such. But I think that the main kind of point I would stress is that the emphasis is on experience, and that's where the bulk of my learning came from. And another significant contributor to my learning was the ISP, where I was alone. And so I think that it's ultimately like, it seems to me to be always like this, it's like this 2-month kind of cycle leading up to the ISP. And like, when I think of SIT, I will think of ISP. That was like if I can give myself like a 4-week-long highlight, it was the ISP period. And I'm sure, I mean, everyone talked about that going in, and I didn't really have any idea, but it's so true to me, at least. So I think that I would highlight how it's this preparation, academic preparation for this ISP that can be like a really amazing experience. But definitely the programs can vary in terms of topics and such across the board.
Right. Okay, great to hear. Last question for you.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wish that you had known going into it before you departed that you'd like to pass along to other students?
Okay, going into my particular program, like in
broadly if you want to, but specifically, of course, if you'd like.
Okay. I'm trying to think. I guess like it's hard to really pinpoint. I think just being prepared, and I mean, we talk about this a lot at the beginning of the program, where we did this semester, from like a cross-cultural perspective, just like being so ready to sit back and take in the culture and adapt, especially in the face of seeing things that really go against your internal kind of compass, or like what you think is right, or what you're accustomed to, or what's respectful and what's disrespectful, what's pushing boundaries. And it's just like a very, and I was prepared for that, and I mean the staff did an excellent job, but I think it's still difficult on a day-to-day level to kind of remember that it's your responsibility to adapt to that culture. And I think that's the case with all of the SIT programs. But India, in a lot of ways, has some really significant cultural differences. So that was probably the most difficult thing. And I know especially, like our program had 4 men and 14 women on it. And especially in the realm of gender, I mean, I'll never know their experience, but I know that like they often had to, really kind of remember, okay, this is the culture. Like, I may not be speaking as much as I want to be, in the family. It's just these things. So, but I think that's also a huge part of the learning experience. It's what made the program really hard, this experience, but also it's a huge part of the learning factor. So, yeah. I think everything else, like I packed what I thought I would pack. I mean, I brought too much like Gatorade powder, but those are like trivial things. I think the mental preparation is important, but at the end of the day, people you can't freak out too much, because like it's a certain point, like you just have to go. Like you can't prepare yourself for what you're going to get into. Like just make sure you have the stuff you need, and then just leave and just kind of jump in. I think that's ultimately the best advice. Don't fret about it too much.
Indeed, that about sums it up perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, Liam. Well, that's all the questions that I have for you. Any other information that you'd like to pass along that maybe I missed?
I think we pretty much covered it. That kind of aligned with what I wanted to share. So I don't think there's anything else. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again very much for taking this time, for speaking with me and speaking to the fellow students.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. Yeah. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.